It's time for the Property Podcast, where every week tens of thousands of property investors, new and experienced, join together to get news, knowledge and laughs at our expense. With me, Rob Bence.
And me, Rob Dix. Join us every Thursday morning for your weekly dose of property ideas and motivation. Then head over to our website at thepropertypodcast.com to keep the conversation going. Now though, let's get started.
Hello and welcome to the Property Podcast. The business series continues. I'm Rob Bence. With me is Rob Dix. Hello, Rob. How are you?
I'm really well, thank you, considering this is the episode that I was really scared about.
Yeah, same here. Number 53. And this week's episode is the propertyhub.net/James. We're interviewing James Schramko this week. And James, if you're listening, you've got a fantastic name, but it'd be a little bit difficult to spell. So the link for this show is nice and easy. thepropertyhub.net/James. Wow, it was a great interview. We were very nervous about this one, but I'm so glad we spoke with him because he was absolutely very polite and gentle with us, wasn't he?
Considering that he'd just been to buy his new surfboard and we kept him from having a play with it, I thought he was very nice to us.
He was.
That's coming up. But first, we need to thank everyone who's signed up to find out more about Yellow Lettings, which we announced back in episode number 50.
Yeah, absolutely crazy. The first 24 hours we had, well, I don't know how many, but lots and lots of people. And then it quickly went through 100. Thank you to everyone for the support, because obviously you're very interested in what we're doing. So we really appreciate it. You've validated our idea basically by your response so quickly. So I'm so glad all the work we've put in so far has been worthwhile. We're very much looking forward to keeping you updated of what's happening. So when we get back onto property in a few weeks' time, we will, of course, give you a big update on what's happening with Yellow Lettings. But if you are interested, go to yellowlettings.net. And if you want us to have a look at one of your properties in the near future for management purposes, then get in touch. Let us know.
A lot of people sent really nice personal emails as well. So thank you to everyone who did that. It was a really positive experience. So we should introduce our guest this week, Mr. James Schramko. So if people aren't aware of who he is, his main website is superfastbusiness.com. And that's kind of his hub in the same way that we've got the hub, where for all his different ventures, he's got a company that does SEO, that does web design, that does content marketing. He does all kinds of stuff. He also gives away vast amounts of content. He's putting out a video practically every day. He's got how many podcasts? Rob, is he up to 3 now? Maybe more.
No, I think he's got Super Fast Business, Think Act Get, Freedom Ocean, and he's just started a new one where he's partnered with a comedian. So he's a podcast gun. He's really hardcore. I'd say Freedom Ocean is my favorite. If you wanted to listen to one of his podcasts to get a feel of what he does, then I'd say start with Freedom Ocean. With Timbo is his, I might call you Robbo. No, I won't. Timbo Reed and James Schramko. Great podcast, really laid back, but lots of business lessons in there. I'd say that's my favourite podcast of the 4 he does, but what a great guy. But Rob, rather than us talking about how good he is, why don't we let everyone else see for themselves?
Yeah, let's do that. James, thanks so much for joining us on the podcast. I know that both of us have listened to Freedom Ocean and we both watch your videos. So we've both been fans of yours for a long time, listened to a lot of what you've done. So it's great to have you on our show.
Oh, it's always nice to get on to a different show and to talk to people in a different country. That's the wonder of Skype these days.
Yeah, this is a truly international call. Are you in Australia today, James?
I am today, yes, but I could easily be anywhere else.
Exactly, that's why I had to check. So, Rob's in Thailand, you're in Australia, and I'm in dark, very cold London. So,
I feel for you.
Yes, I feel for me too, especially when I know where you two are. So, kicking off, as Rob said, we both listen to your podcast, so we know you run multiple businesses. And last I heard, you had around about 60 employees. But every time you talk, you seem to be either about to go surfing or traveling. How do you do it?
Well, my whole team are in another country, so that's one thing. I don't have to be tied to an office. And I literally just came back from picking up another surfboard. I'm like an amateur surfer now, and it's my passion and hobby. And really, that was the driving force. When I was sitting at a desk about 6 years ago, and I quit that job to become a full-time entrepreneur, it was a choice where I wanted a business that could fund my lifestyle. That was really the order of things, because I was sick of slaving away in an office, and I wanted to create something that worked when I wasn't working. I didn't want a job-like business. I wanted a business that was creating an income that I can certainly get involved and I can work it, but I can step away for a little bit. And that's why I can travel and why I do have time off each day.
It sounds like a lot of people end up creating a very job-like business for themselves. You could argue for a lot of people it is just a job. They just don't have a boss. But you from the start have been adamant that you're going to run the business. It's going to be separate from you. You can step away at any time. But it's still challenging to get people to do things to your standards. So what challenges did you have when you were bringing on your first employees and getting your business up and running?
I think part of the challenge in the beginning was not being clear on what they were going to do. The first two roles were very easy. They were replicating something that I was doing. The first one was content creation, writing articles, because I recognized that was not my ideal skill set and it was a fairly low value task. The second one was support, because most entrepreneurs, as they start out on their own, run out of support capacity fairly quickly. If you're dealing with any kind of selling or any kind of service level industry, or even software for that matter, you're going to have support requirements. So I scaled support, and I really do focus on which parts of my business can scale and which parts am I going to get stuck with myself. And everything that I find I get stuck with, I really try hard to document it into what we call a standard operating procedure. And then I transfer it from me to someone else in my team. And the third step, which a lot of business owners forget to do, is to make sure that whoever I transfer it to is able to transfer it to somebody else as a backup. And I call this the Noah principle, which is like Noah's Ark. We have two people that can do everything in the business because I don't want to be dragged back down into doing it myself again.
So, James, you touched on systems there. It's often challenging on how to describe to others what you actually want them to do and get them done to your standards. But give us a sense of how your systems run smoothly now. And what would probably surprise the audience that is something that you have automated that they probably expect that you do?
Okay, well, it's actually amazing what my team can do now. I can just give them even an idea and then they can implement. I could come back from a conference and I could say, okay, team, we need to be doing this sort of campaign. So here's a domain name. I'd like you to build out the site, design it, publish it, set up analytics goals, set up the shopping cart, write the copy, create the video for it. Then I want you to start marketing it. They could do everything. And it's very exciting that they're that capable. One of the things that I've really enjoyed lately is the ability for me to pass on my videos for editing and publishing. So I will think of an idea, or an idea will be sent to me by the team. So today my team member said, hey boss, we're really good with Shopify now. We've been doing well with WordPress, but the customers we're doing Shopify work for are raving about it. So I'm like, okay, I'll go and make a video about that. So I turn on my camera, turn on my microphone. I make a video which is about 1 minute long, explaining that we now do Shopify. I then put the video into Dropbox, and that's it. From now on, the team will go and edit that video. They'll put a trailer on it. They'll upload it to YouTube. They'll put it on my website. They'll transcribe every word of it. They'll illustrate it. They'll make a blog post from it, tag it, title it, publish it, and then syndicate it. And they'll send me an email letting me know when it's done. And then I'll probably send out an email to support that video. But they could do that too. But at this stage, I'm happy to do that part.
I'm envious just listening to the description of all the stuff that you don't have to do, but it can't have been that easy at first. So what was the process of putting all those pieces together? And is it the same person who's going through that entire procedure, or are there multiple people handing off to each other?
There are multiple people in that team, and I call that team the Octopus team. And that is because our website, and particularly our offer page, our product page, or our opt-in, we consider is like the mouth on the octopus's head. And the tentacles are all of the syndications that we can do, bringing people back to the blog post. So it's basically my marketing team. There's about 4 people in that. And I even publish an entire course for free on my website explaining every step of the process. It's called Own the Race Course. The steps to getting this happening were firstly to accept that it is possible. I think a lot of business owners hang on to the idea that they're the only person in the world that can do a task. And the reality is it's just not true. Secondly, you have to build a team around you. or hire a team like mine. So we actually provide publishing service for other businesses because they should not be doing this stuff. An entrepreneur who's sitting there learning editing software and transcribing videos themselves is doing a low value task that someone else could do just as well or better than them. The third thing is to start mapping out the process so that you can transfer it. So what I do with my team is I do the process first. I do every step and I document it. You could do this on a whiteboard or you could do it with a post-it notepad in your hand. So let's say I make the video, I write down create video. That's a post-it note. On the next one, I'll write edit video. On the next one, I might say load video to YouTube. And then the next one, I might be embed video on blog post. The next one might be transcribe video, then illustrate video, and then so on and so forth. And then you put these post-it notes in order. And that forms the basis for your first standard operating procedure. And just like an airline pilot or a hospital nurse, I will go through the checklist every time I do the process to make sure that I've got every step documented. And then I do an I, we, you transfer, which is I've done it. Now we do it together. I do it with my team and then you do it, which is the team does it by themselves and then I check it. And when you have it done for the first time with them doing it every single step, you want to be very, very careful when you check it. It's important to bounce the job 3 times, right? I learned this from one of my mentors. If it's not perfect, hand it back. Don't fix it yourself. If you fix it yourself, you're training your team that they can give you sloppy work and that you'll compensate for that. But if you hand it back and say, it's not quite finished yet, here's something that needs happening, and you show it to them, and just be adamant that it has to be perfect. So generally you hand the job back a few times until they get it just right. And by the time you've done this 3 times, you'll probably never have to correct it again. They'll get the process down. They'll know that you have high standards. And finally, the work can be done at your standard, but not by you. So now all I have to do is continuously create content. So in the next few days, I might do 5 or 6 podcast interviews and put them into Dropbox, and I won't have to touch them again, and they'll automatically get put out onto my website.
I love the amount of detail you go into your systems, and you'd have to with the size of team you have. And that's clearly been a big part of your success. But you touched on something there when you were talking own the race course. Now, own the race course is a strategy Rob and I have really taken to heart as well, because we've got obviously the podcast, but we've got our own property forum. So we very much have bought into what you talk about. Can you explain it to our listeners and tell them why you think it's so important to do if you're a business owner?
The simple premise of Own the Race Course is that you should be in control of your platform or your assets. And the simple mistake that most people make is that because it's so easy to put content on other people's platforms, and I'm talking specifically about Facebook here and also YouTube and iTunes, is that people only build on that platform and they forget to build their own platform. And then what happens is at some point the rules change or something becomes out of favor. You look at MySpace or, Friend Feed or whatever, they disappear. And then your whole platform disappears if that's where you built. So what I do is I encourage you to get your own website and build on your own platform there and use the other properties to let people know that you've updated your platform. So I'm building a monster authority site at superfastbusiness.com. That's where my community lives. That's where my services are. That's where my recommendations are. And that is getting a lot of search traffic from Google. I share posts on Facebook and, of course, my podcasts on iTunes. And I also replicate the videos onto YouTube. But the content lives on my site, and I'm telling them about it through those channels. So if anything happens with those channels, we'll still be fine. We're not single source dependent. And that's really the danger of one in the business is what brings a lot of entrepreneurs undone. They have one source of income or one person that can do all the jobs or one source of traffic and one source of funding. If you only have one, you basically just on a tightrope and it's only a matter of time until you fall off. And that's why the first thing I teach anyone who comes to work with me as a student is to have 2 of everything.
Yeah, so you've done that at all the levels. You've done it with your traffic. You've done it with having a backup person to implement every process. It makes a lot of sense, and you've kind of de-risked yourself to a big degree there. Let's shift to talking about something that you were doing before you got into online business when you were working at Mercedes. And you were a top salesman there, but you don't come across as a car salesman kind of guy in the nicest possible sense. And I've heard you say that you had a very different sales philosophy from a lot of your colleagues. And it was that different way that you approached your job that helped you be more successful. What was your philosophy back then?
Well, my philosophy came from some very successful salespeople who came from the Xerox Corporation. And some people won't even know what that is. But Xerox were the photocopier salespeople, and they were selling high-end equipment, for 600,000 or 700,000 or millions of dollars. They learnt a lot of selling philosophy from Neil Rackham, which was spin selling. And I was brought up in that environment before I went into the motor vehicle industry. And the core philosophy is that a sale is simply the process of change from one situation to a better alternative situation. And it's better if the customer decides to make that choice to move. So you don't need hype or pressure or manipulative closing techniques. All you need to do is create the environment where the customer feels that they would be better off for saying yes to your offer. And if you can create the environment where they're better off for saying yes, then there's no resistance and people will simply move forward into the sale of their own motivation. You don't need a lot of tricks or pressure. And now a sale occurs, the transaction's done, the customer's better off, and you also win as well.
You've carried that philosophy through to your own businesses. So you didn't stop at Mercedes. You've obviously carried that through, and you spend a lot of your time helping people, giving stuff away for free. Information really is your marketing. That was a big shift away from the affiliate and paid ads model that most people use in your field. I know you did affiliate at the beginning, but you quickly moved away from that. So did you get results straight away, or was it a leap of faith?
The whole time I've been online, I have had a value creation mindset and a long-term approach. My first affiliate success was creating a complimentary bonus that people buying software that I recommended could get for free. So the buyer was getting something additional to the thing that they were purchasing. I was getting a commission from the software company, which was beneficial for them because I was bringing them more customers. I was helping people make a decision to buy the software, and I was offering a service almost on a commission-only basis, really, the effort that I put into it. And I was taking the risk on the advertising and the content creation and building out websites. So the customer was winning and the software company was winning and I was winning. I guess the only people who didn't win were some of my competitors and some of the software company's competitors. But in the end, I've carried that philosophy the whole time. I've always served my customers with good quality information. I've never treated them like fools. I haven't done anything cheesy or hypey, and I've basically eradicated many of the shortcomings that I see most marketers making. But they don't know better in some cases. And also there's some cultural differences, especially in the US market, where people actually like being sold to sometimes.
You must have been quite strong-minded to do this on both occasions, because when you were selling cars and everyone around you is giving it the hard sell, doing things very differently from you, and you're the only one who's using this other model, and then the same again online, where everyone else is doing the really hypey, high-pressure stuff, and you're going your own way. Was it difficult to do that, or did you just have complete faith somehow that you were doing the right thing?
No, for me, it would be difficult to be a douchebag and to do terrible crimes to humanity, which I saw the salespeople doing. In the car dealership, they would look up the stock sheet, work out the car that's had the biggest commission, and then they would literally, in their words, jab the next customer with that car. And I thought that was appalling, and I don't know, it's just the values I was brought up with and the way that I feel about it. But it only takes one cycle to realize that my strategy was more effective, because within 2 years, half my business was repeat referral. And when you have an automotive vehicle that's selling at an average price of $85,000 and the commission might be between $300 and $2,000, then you start to really realize it's so much easier to deal with someone you've already dealt with before. And if they don't actually hate you because you didn't do them a disservice or an injustice when you did the first transaction, they'll come and buy from you with low resistance. And it's no coincidence that my current business, I have more than 90% of my sales is repeat customers on a recurring billing scenario. So I'm not after that hunter mentality of slay the next animal for a meal. I'm growing orchards and vineyards, and I'm getting continual harvests from the same fields, and I'm just expanding and learning how to nurture. I think I'm a nurturer. And it's great to have harvests from the same crop. It's just easier. It makes perfect sense to me. And whilst it might take some discipline for someone who's indoctrinated into the hunting mentality, it's by far more profitable.
James, thank you so much for your time today, because I know you have, well, I say you've got a lot on, but actually you've just been surfing. So, yeah.
That's it. This is my whole appointment for the day.
But I wanted to thank you, not just for coming on the podcast, but actually for the influence that you've had on our businesses, because, we very much buy into everything you've talked about today. I've just gone through this interview just to sort of, you can't see me nodding, but nodding my head and completely agreeing with everything you've said and reinforcing a lot of the stuff we've done, and particularly the own the racecourse strategy. That's something that I was aware of, but when you documented it that way, it's something that Rob and I went, we have to follow this. So thank you for that as well. But if our audience want to learn more from you, what can they do? How can they find you? What's the best way to follow all that? Because you do quite a lot. So where should they go first?
Well, luckily I put a lot of it at superfastbusiness.com. They could grab the racecourse course for free there. I also give away another one of my courses, which was sold at one point and it's now free. It's called Wealthification. And that one teaches business owners how to make a much more profitable business that can fund their lifestyle. And I just felt that it would be better to give these courses away and to show people what I'm all about and to let them make up their own mind if they want to move forward into something else. But there's a lot of free information there that people can sink their teeth into with no obligation whatsoever.
That's great. And I've watched both those courses. Wealthification in particular, I think, is really relevant to our audience. So we're going to link to all of that in the show notes. But now let's just say, James, thank you so much for being with us today.
Well, thank you, Rob and Rob.
Cheers, James. Thanks a lot. Wow, what a great interview, Rob. James Schramko, such a gentleman and so envious too. He's 60 people and he goes to surf every day. Unbelievable.
That is a man who has got his life together. Rather, he's got his business together and it's playing exactly the right role in his life. Let's talk about what we can take away from that interview then.
Yeah, let's have a look at what we can learn and also translate to property. So the big one for me is he's not created a role for himself. He's built a massive business. He has 60 full-time staff. Yet, every day, he picks and chooses what he wants to do. Now, let's be straight. He's not started from that and done that in a short space of time. He's built up to that level. But from the day he started, that was his intention. And let's flip that back to property. Some people have portfolios and they do hardly any work. Some people have portfolios and they've created jobs for themselves. What you have to realize is it's a choice. If you want to build a portfolio and not have to work and not have to, day to day spend lots of time on it, then you don't have to. You can do what James has done and build systems, hire a good team, train people correctly, and then you can step away from your portfolio or your business in his case. But Rob, systems is definitely how he's got there.
Yeah, big time. So systems is something that's come up a lot in these interviews, but he went into some detail that I really enjoyed. So he talked about the importance of having a backup person. And I thought that was really interesting because it is normally like in the attempts that I've made at systemizing, if someone sort of disappears or is on holiday or something, can't do it, it comes back to me. James doesn't want that, so he has someone else on standby. 2 people can do every job within his company. So I thought that was really interesting. And the other thing was having the discipline to, if someone sends him something that he's not happy with, he sends it back to them. He doesn't make the correction himself. He tells them what needs to be changed and gets them to do it. And he'll do that 3 times if necessary. And I thought that was really important because in the early days, when you're trying to get someone to do something up to your standards, it can be really tempting because it's boring to write everything out in the first place and then to give the instructions. It's easier if it comes back like 90% done just to do the rest yourself, but then they'll never learn. And so he knew that if he put in the effort in the early days, it would pay off. And it really has paid off. I enjoyed those 2 tips from him, and that's something that I'm going to be making an attempt to do in my business.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, something else that resonated with me was the sales strategy he approaches. He educates first In fact, he educates. He doesn't do any hard selling at all. It's all about the education. It's all about providing information, letting people judge for themselves off the information you create. And then they'll see, yes, that person's well worth working with. Not, oh, well, they've rammed it down my throat so much that, oh, well, we may as well work with him. James proves himself time and time again with all the great quality content he puts out on a daily basis. So that's why so many people want to work with him. That's, to me, I thought, yeah, ticking the box there. I'm so glad to see other people doing that. And James is, someone who very much leads the way when it comes to, educating first, selling second.
I thought it's quite telling, isn't it? Like, of the one thing that he's decided to keep doing in his company is the education. The bit that doesn't appear to make him any money, but that's the bit that he does, and everything else he gets his team to do. So that says something. Yes, so lots to take away from this interview. Again, if you want to add your own thoughts or you've got questions or anything to say about it, get over to the Property Hub. So if you go to the show notes for this episode, thepropertyhub.net/James, you'll find a link to a dedicated topic in the hub where you can go and add your thoughts. And I hope you're seeing all the ways that what we're learning can be linked back to property. So even if you just take the first point that Rob made about James not having a role for himself in his company, that we've seen debates along those lines in the hub already. There are people who are very investor mentality. They're very hands off. There are other people who are very hands on. They love being hands on. They love doing things themselves. And, they make more money as a result because they don't have to pay other people to do things. They get a higher profit margin, but at the same time, it takes up their time, but they enjoy that. So all these things relate directly back to property. So if you want to go and discuss this episode, do go over to thepropertyhub.net/James, go over to the forum, and we'd love to hear what you think.
Absolutely. Another great episode, Rob. I'm really enjoying speaking to other experts and learning from them and their insights. And as you say, every single episode we've been able to translate some of these lessons to property, and this one's been no different. So thank you to James. If you're listening, really appreciate you giving us your time. We know you're very busy with all your surfing, so we do appreciate it. But that's us for another week. Next week, we've got the famous John Lee Dumas. Yes, that's right, everyone. The guy from Entrepreneur on Fire. He is on fire. You're going to be very, very impressed with what he's achieved. What an interview that was. We can't wait to tell you more about it. So join us next week and we'll take you through his story.
See you next week. Bye-bye.
Thanks for listening to The Property Podcast. Make sure you join our mailing list at thepropertypodcast.com.
And remember, we love 5-star reviews. Rob even loves them more than air miles.